Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, everyone for coming to our meeting tonight. We do have one adjustment to the agenda in 5.1 with Philip Johnson. Philip Johnson will not be here from the Alita. Otherwise, I would look for approval of the agenda.
I'll approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second at all?
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Pose the same side. Thank you, Kim. Kim is beaming in tonight remotely, so hello, Kim. I'll try to watch for you. Sometimes I miss out, so. Okay, let's go to number 3, which is celebrating our successes. Aaron, come on up. Well, you probably never thought this day would come, did you, after you said yes? No. 2 years wasn't too long, was it?
No, not at all.
All right, good. Well, we truly appreciate all your input you had over the years, and it's always great. I mean, our students, and now we got a great student. You got to carry the torch now, you know. So, but we truly appreciate everything you did, and I want to wish you the best. And again, I would hate to say I hope you stay with kind of governmental things, but I think maybe I could hit a home run on that one.
Probably.
All right. Well, on behalf of the board, again, in recognition of your student help with our board, Aaron, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you. I think Ashley wanted to take that.
While she's doing that, Aaron, I have heard nothing but good comments back on your graduation speech. You look so calm and well rehearsed on it, and everybody I've heard from is just nothing but good to say. So
it was a tough act to follow.
You're right.
I enjoyed it, so
That's
thanks.
great. Well, good. Well, thank you. Good luck with everything.
And I appreciate the input that you provided at our board meetings. I mean, you weren't just a token. You were a factor.
Thank you, Neil. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. You bet. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, no action items tonight, so we will head on into our study session topics. And 5.1, again, we've removed from the agenda. So 5.2, Kathy Bauman is going to talk to us a little bit on an annual report for the ATPPS. Welcome.
Hi there. That we would put it as one report this year. So, all right. Here I just have kind of a description of what our ATPPS is. And we are in our 17th, or ending our 17th, I believe, year of participation. So I'll let you kind of read through that. Some of the components that we have are our site goals, student achievement goals. Those are individual for teachers that they make for their IGPs, career advancement, leadership positions, observations, job-embedded staff development. All right. And then our teacher leadership positions, we have one district coordinator, myself, 8 coordinators or instructional coaches, and then 41 instructional team leaders. This can change just in terms of like how many we have from year to year, depending on the need for how many collaborative teams that we have within our schools. But 41 is our top number. And so the job embedded professional development, basically this year looked a little bit different than most, just in terms of what day that we had our collaborative team meetings on. So PLCs met every Wednesday or Friday for 45 minutes. Our normal time usually is in the morning, but with this year and having the changes between hybrid and distance and that kind of thing, depended on whether or not you met on a Wednesday or a Friday, and we adjusted throughout the year, but always that 45 minutes each week. And then I have just kind of a breakdown of some of the things that are discussed in those meetings and worked on. And then we always address the 4 critical questions. This is something that has not changed over the years. The only thing that we've done now is I have a +1 on there. This actually came into effect. We talked about it last year and implemented it into this year, but adding in that HRS piece for level 2, effective teaching. And so how will we increase our instructional competency? And this is really, again, kind of bringing in that level 2 work that we are now beginning. And then the teacher eval and peer review. Our administration and our union negotiators had met, and kind of through guidance also from MDE's COVID school guidance for this year, which goes through June 30th. They then changed, we normally have 2 peer reviews, our observations through our instructional coaching, and that was moved to 1 this year. The 3 evaluations by administrator for probationary teachers stay the same, and then 2 informal observations required, which is teachers observing teachers. Again, that's more of a reflection of this year, whereas it should move back next year. And this is just kind of a graphic showing what that looks like in terms of a typical formal observation.
How did the teachers adjust with the hybrid model? Did you see as it went along getting more fluid and easier to do, or any challenges you had with that?
I think of course there's going to be challenges with it, but I think our teachers really did their best to try to deliver the best that they could, and I thought that they did a pretty good job of that. I can speak more to my building, I guess, just because myself as a middle school teacher, I teach science, 6th grade, and so with that, we went into this year planning kind of with the idea that we wanted to make sure that we could transition between different learning models, because we did not know what was going to happen necessarily. And so with having last year's distance learning kind of in mind, we were able to do a little bit of what worked best if we did go to a distance learning again. What could we do to change and kind of maximize, make sure that we're giving the kids the best we can. And I think it did. I think that a lot of teachers really grew just in general. I mean, we had to find different ways to be able to meet what the kids needed and things like that. One thing that was kind of interesting, just the fact of remembering then when we got into full-time person learning in 4th quarter was the amount of paper that we weren't using. And so teaching kids to not only, they got excited when we did use it, but also be able to teach them to not lose it because they just weren't used to it. It was, wasn't a normal thing for us. And then this is the pay performance or performance pay incentive. It's $1,300, and so the breakdown is with the building site goal. And if it's met, that's $150 that goes to each teacher. If it is not, that then is returned to the building for professional development, for staff development for the following year. Now, last year, that money automatically went back to the buildings just because, again, per recommendation from MDE. And then this year, again, another adjustment, that individual growth plan, that SMART goal based on student achievement, is at $0 this year, but it's only because it was transferred into the actual cycle work and PLC work that was done. So that, again, would probably return again to the individual SMART goal for next year. And so some recommendations for next year, just kicking off, we're going to be kicking off our HRS Level 2 Effective Teaching in Every Classroom. January 5th, we have Dr. Phil Warwick will be coming for a training for our Level 2 kickoff. We'll be starting some of that work ourselves in the fall too, but that's going to be like the official from HRS. He'll be coming for that training. Continuing requiring those 2 peer reviews, where that was 1 this year. And then I'll let you look through the rest. It's kind of things that have been there before. And any questions?
What percentage of the teachers generally meet the standard or get the bonus pay?
In terms of like the entire pay?
Yes.
I would say we are in the high 90s. I'm looking through some of that work. I had, as of this year, I had 100%. But as to if they reached the maximum or not, there was maybe just a couple, but sometimes that has to do with other outside circumstances. So it's just adjustments. But yeah, no, this year I did, everybody had. I think with the HRS work too, it almost is embedded within that as well, so they really do go hand in hand.
So we didn't have teachers engaging in growth plans because of COVID this year?
No, they still did. We just moved the money that was tied to that into the whole PLC work. So the whole instructional coaching cycle. And for instance, for me this year, I'll use mine. We did an engagement goal just because we knew going into this year was going to be different, and we really wanted to connect with those kids, no matter what the format might be. So I believe mine was something around, did we say 80% or 90% of our students? I think 90% of our students would complete work and have all of their work in, or be able to somehow, like in terms of when we're doing virtual work and things like that, all of that is encompassing within our entire year. And so when we kind of used, for instance, like first quarter, I had used as a baseline, just kind of seeing like how were they getting into this, and I think I was at 62%. Oh, I know it was 80%, because then through third quarter, we had used that. Basically, we were testing more so our new science standards in 6th grade, so that's kind of what we were going through with that, but ended with 82%. So implementing some of our new science standards. So that was for me personally, but.
You mentioned earlier that there was a term limit. Is that
Yes.
to your position, or is that to all positions?
That's to all positions, and that's through guidance of MDE. They require, so like for me, I have my first year is a 3-year term limit, and then after that is 2 years, every 2 years. Instructional coaches are 2 years. Our collaborative team leaders, which would be, in charge of each of their own PLCs, so like a science in that case is a 1 year, so they interview every year.
So they could continue coming back if they wanted?
Yes, yep. Any other questions?
Kim, anything? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Very much. Okay, we'll go to 5.3, start time survey data. Dr. Funk?
So the board has received the packets with, I think we had a total of 1,800 surveys returned between the teachers, the students, and I think about 900 members of the public. You have them, Ashley, you can go to one of the PDFs, go pop up, why don't you pop up the teachers first? And just kind of roll from there, and just, you know, really, survey was for the board, and want to provide you the opportunity to, you know, look, you've had it since I think last Thursday. You've had a chance to read through the thoughts, and we can go from there. So option A, once again, if just can you scroll for me a little bit, Ashley? So option A was current model, which was for this past school year, which was the really later start, 9:15 to 3:45, and then 3:55 at the middle school. Option B was shifting it 15 minutes earlier, so it would be 9 to 3:30 at the high school for next year. 7:45 start time in the elementaries. Option C was to go back a year to how it used to be on a one-tier with many of the students starting and ending similar start times. And of course, then there was option D, which was really shifting things 25 minutes later and still be on a one-tier. So really the things for the board to consider here are the one and the two-tier approaches, and then really, you know, do we want to adjust our start times? And so I want to thank the community for their great feedback. Like I said, I think we had 900 and some responses from our community members, and 700 and some from the students, and 200 from the teachers, over 200 from the teachers. So that's kind of the options we looked at. So go ahead and scroll back up, Ashley. So you can see there, color-coded wise, or you know what, you can go back down. I think you have the percentages in the columns, don't you? Yep, so the percentages are in the right-hand column there. So about 26% of the teachers said, we like this current year. 22% said, we'd like the current year, but we want to start a little bit earlier. 35% said, let's go back a year. And 16% said, yep, we'd like a later start time, but not as late as we've been doing. And, you know, this is the teacher one. Why don't you just real quick pop up the community one, Ashley, and then we can give the opportunity to board to discuss. Parents a little bit different than the teachers. Scroll down a little bit. Okay, again, just about same amount, said 25, 26%. We like what we're currently doing. Option B, a little bit less, 13% said we like that option. Option C is the one-tier model going back to the way it used to be, 42%. And option D, that was kind of the third choice in this group at 18%. And then go ahead to the students, Ashley. Students were the only one who had a majority in the group here. These other all were pluralities. Students said 14% liked option A, 17% liked option B, 55% of the students liked option C, which is last year's option, and 12% liked option D. So students were a bit different than the community, parents, and the teaching staff. So I know you had the opportunity to review the comments, lots of fascinating comments within the survey from all the groups. So that gives you a little bit of thought on where our community is at on things, looking at it from the perspective of a teacher, a student, and a family member. So that's what I can tell you at this point.
Any discussion, I guess, as I looked at it, it looked like everyone liked the back a year, but it wasn't 60% to 20% to 10 and 5. I know Part D was also kind of something we talked about once about starting a little later, giving everybody a little bit more sleep time, but still at the one tier. What percentage of our students were riding the buses, we'll say a year ago, I guess is how we're coming. Do you have any idea, Mike? I mean, was it 22% that are really affected by the busing versus?
I can look into that, I don't know what that number is.
Okay, I was just, again, curious on how many we're kind of talk about, and I don't expect a survey just on the ones that rode the bus, but, didn't know how many were. That was, I mean, that was my thoughts. I thought it was interesting. It was all pretty similar, and again, there wasn't, you know, well, I guess on the one with the kids, the students, it was 52%, if I remember, with going back to the way we were before. So, any other thoughts?
When are we voting on this? Is it our next meeting?
I would imagine it'd be the next meeting. That's when we have our transportation contract would come to the vote, so it would be consistent with that.
Yeah, I had a similar response. And I know that one of the biggest issues with activities, even with the way it was in the good old days, was that occasionally students involved in athletic activities would have to miss the last couple periods of class. It's worse in the spring with baseball and track and sports that are conducted outdoors. And if we go later, it's going to be worse. I mean, they're going to be missing a half a day routinely. So that's a problem.
Kim, go ahead.
I thought I would add something that I found out just today. I was talking to some colleagues at Riverland, and they had heard that, and these would be academic folks at Riverland, and they had heard that this was something we were talking about changing our start time. They seemed very excited or interested with the potential of, if we did do a tier, either of the tier 2, you would have enough time to potentially have a 0 hour similar than we have like with our CNA program. So the students could potentially not disrupt their schedule at the high school. We would give them more opportunities for college in the schools, and again, this would all be some stuff they'd have to work out academically, but there was definite eyebrow raising, and this is interesting. This is an interesting concept because we're really wanting to give the most opportunities, and Albert Lee's positioned so well with just being literally steps away from a campus. And so I just throw that out there as another benefit to a later start, the potential. And I haven't even talked to Mike about that, so I'm sorry about that. That happened this afternoon, but just another food for thought, and I don't even know if it's doable. And while I'm talking about it, so what I see, if I'm understanding right, the staff are saying, over half the staff are saying, so almost 60%, right, of the staff are saying they want to go to a tier 2 busing system. Either A or B.
57, 58% of the staff want to do that. Yes.
What about, what was the parents on that one, Ashley? So now you're 38, 39%. Kind of balances out. Kids, I think, were in the 1 tier. That's why I was kind of curious on how many are kind of being affected anymore. And I guess we won't know that really until this year because of the changing again last year. I'm with Neil. I guess I had a lot of activity kids, and even if it doesn't come to the missing of the half a day or 2, 3 periods at the end of the day, it still gets to be a long day. I remember as coming from the public to coach, it sure seemed like we started early. My day was hardly getting going, and I was there again by 3 o'clock, but the kids have been there and have already wound through their whole day.
Just a thought on that, and Paul, you're out there, and you can weigh in on this if you want as the AD. We do have early release concerns with our students. However, and this is my dad hat that I'm putting on, I can remember trying to pry my children out of bed after late night sporting activities to get at school by 8 o'clock. And the issue there is, I think major issues with getting kids to school first hour because of late night sports activities. And I don't know if that's still the case, Paul, or was the case, or what are your thoughts on that?
We battled attendance issues first hour of school day with athletes where those events are going later in the evening as it is, and the next day they have trouble getting to school on time just because of the later evenings.
I remember those days too, when we were traveling by bus on 14 to Lyle from good old Elmore down there, and it seemed like we didn't get back. However, we were all there the next day. Now, Paul, am I correct in remembering we basically are potentially, without rescheduling games and all that, probably one game a week if we're into, let's say, the winter sports where they're playing maybe Tuesdays and Fridays, just give an example, where they're actually away. So they're home, they would be home more than away during the week? I mean, we're talking about coming to classes first hour. Or,
In our schedule, home, it's pretty even home away. It depends on the sport how many each week.
because it always seemed like before Christmas, if we were just basketball, using it as an example, we played at home on Fridays. After Christmas, we played at home on Tuesdays when we flipped the schedule. Isn't that how they do that yet or not?
A little more scrambled now.
Okay.
One other piece to throw out, and I don't have any specifics at this time, but the Big Nine Conference schools are also looking at later start times. And as a conference for activities, we are looking at scheduling our start times for events a little later to accommodate so that kids don't miss as much school. I can bring more data to Dr. Palmer.
Neil, didn't they just milk the cows early in the morning so you had to get up anyway?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, farm kids, they're used to not getting a lot of sleep. But, the thing that intrigues me about all of this is, and Paul just pointed it out, all right, so we're going to have our older kids start later because data suggests that they can't get out of bed in the morning. And so, as a result, now we're going to schedule activities later so they don't miss so many classes, which means they're going to get home later, which means they're still going to have a hard time getting pried out of bed in the morning. You just moved it back an hour or so. And then, 5 years later, we'll move it back another hour, it's the problem is there are only so many hours in a day. I like the two-tiered arrangement for a lot of reasons. A couple, you separate the kindergarten kids from the seniors in high school. And in certain situations, depending on the students, that may be a good or bad thing. And in addition to that, you can get by theoretically with fewer buses, and you get, you have a machine, and you don't use it just once a day or twice a day. Now you use it 4 times a day, and it's more efficient. I mean, I can see efficiencies there, and the drivers, they'd be they'd be, you'd need half as many of them, and it'd be good for them because they'd have twice as many hours. I mean, I like the two-tiered arrangement, but moving the elementary kids earlier and then the high school kids later, it has some issues, some problems. And I hear Kim. I love the arrangement where students have an option to schedule. I mean, like we have an 8-period day. They could schedule a 0 hour or whatever, an early hour, an early class, or a late class, same way they do in college. And they can arrange for a schedule that accommodates their own needs and desires. I don't know if that's what we're talking about here, though. I haven't heard anything that would suggest that we are. I can see that would result in some problems contractually and staffing, if you're going to have the day just spread out and give students an option of when they want to take their classes in terms of early or late.
Paul, what percentage or the number of kids are involved in athletics in any given season? How many kids is this affecting by late night and early rise?
I'd say 45% of our students in any given season would be, maybe a little less, 40% in any given season
At the high school?
at the high school. And not every sport is impacted by early releases from school. It's the longer traveling trips, your golf, the activities that take longer to complete or need sunlight to complete, they'll get out earlier.
Track and field.
Most leave after school's out or close to the end of the school day.
I think another factor with athletics is that significant, at least I know in the sport of wrestling, you're a huge amount of the time you're having activities on Saturdays, so it's not an issue. And then your dual events, and I think other sports do have multi competition events, regardless of what sport is, and that's an extended period of time, much more extended than a simple one event. And those events that are a single events, like a dual meet or a Austin Albertley basketball game, those shorter events are typically during the week, and then you flip-flop home and away. I think a lot of activities now have more away meets than they have home meets, unless they're hosting some of these multi-contest events on Saturdays. So but again, if you're gonna schedule events during the week at a later time, then it's just gonna be that much later that kids are gonna be able to get home, do their homework, get to bed. So
I think the research on that, Neil, it's their sleep cycle. The kids do stay up later, but then they sleep later. I mean, and so I think that what they're talking is that the research says the later the adolescents start school, regardless of how late they go to bed at night, they seem to be more ready for.
I've witnessed that research also, and it seems like a mystery to me. How it doesn't make any difference what time they go to bed. They they function better if they get up later.
Yes, I was just going to say, I'm not a morning person, so I appreciate the idea of asking about a later start, and I'm open to all of these. Personally, I'm not surprised by the results. I've heard just a lot of hunger from the community to go back to normal, like others here. I wanted to say thank you for doing the survey. it seemed like it was worded well and people had the information they needed, so, it seemed like it was just well done, but.
The comments that I've heard are on the two-tier, just some of the pressure on the families with the childcare, because they're going to one spot, then they're getting moved to another spot and bouncing around. So on the one hand, I really sense that the one-tier model might be a good venue, knowing the studies and the research. You know, even if you're giving the kids 15 more minutes, especially at the high school, 15 or 20 minutes is a lot for them and can really help them out, and you're really not extending the day too much later. One of the positives that I saw is there were mornings with basketball. We were in the gym early morning, and sometimes that wasn't so good for all of the kids. So if you add on 15 at the end of the day, you have a little later start in the early morning. Wednesdays is always going to be a challenge because that's the early out days that with religious education, we're done by 7 o'clock, so that actually would just become a shorter practice day. You'd have to work around that. So from what I'm hearing, I through the lens I see it too, would be the one tier might be more beneficial for the families, and then however you go about adjusting that day, where can we find the sweet spot on it to help everybody?
I told Mr. Dibble, who has been a middle school principal for the past 3 years, he'd have the opportunity to share, because since he's taken over as the middle school principal, he has been on me to change what we do with the bus hub at Southwest. So Chris, why don't you come on up and give the board your thoughts on one tier versus two, having lived through both.
It didn't start with me. I'd like to add that is the one thing I was told when I got to Southwest was, wait till you see the bus hub. And I was like, it's a bus hub. What could possibly be bad? When you take, how many of our kids travel on buses, percentage-wise? Any idea? It's a lot. And so what we do is we send them all to Southwest. And we line up 16 buses. And we keep all of the 550 middle school kids in one spot for 20 minutes. A feat in its own there. And then when all the buses get there, they say go, and every elementary kid runs out into the parking lot to the bus they're supposed to be at, gets on that bus, and then so do the high school kids. And then we let the middle school kids get on the buses. Meanwhile, there's people picking up in the parking lot, zooming behind the buses on this side, going down the street on the other side by Sibley. It is a safety concern. It's a supervision concern because I don't have enough staff at Southwest to watch all these things that are going on. This year, with the 2 tiers, we cut it down to the only person out there was the person from the bus company. That's all it took. We left the students on the buses until they were there. The elementary kids made their shifts. They left. When our Southwest kids got out, the buses came. High school kids had already shifted. They got on and they left. Teachers were inside, doing with students that stayed after school. People that, were picking up. We're using Sibley's side of the street. We're using Front Street because Sibley was done. So we lined them up a quarter mile down the street. Kids walked to the cars, got in their cars, and left. We didn't have anyone picking up in the front lot anymore. Much improved in the safety department. So from that point of view on the 2 tiers, watching all of this happen, and when I get videos of buses, it's usually a fight in the back with older kids or older middle school kids picking on elementary kids in the front. That's what I see from security. So by dividing our secondary kids away from our elementary kids, I think that's a huge effect on our students. So that's the bus hub report. Yeah, and then I knew Mike was going to say, yeah, let's just use Hammer. Oh, great. That sounds like a great idea. But
Yeah, Chris, I appreciate that, and I'm fully aware of the horror show that occurs, at Southwest when you have that Indianapolis time trials, with all the traffic in the world assembling at the same place and in the worst possible circumstances. And then you assign some poor individual who has to be supervising this.
Yeah, we put 6 or 7 a year is what we usually put out there, and this year we put 0.
Yeah. I wouldn't want that supervisory response. Bruce and I, by the way, were the first class that went through Southwest for 3 years. And I think we both have recollections, nothing we were ever involved in, but some real tedious and difficult encounters took place out there where the buses met.
Oh, he got a shot. I told him.
Thanks, Chris. Kim, any thoughts? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I had a question. On the surveys, were teachers that are parents, were they given the opportunity to take, or did they have to take it as a teacher or a parent, or they could?
It went to all teachers and it went to all parents, so they could have taken it both times if they wanted to.
Okay.
Was there any, do we have any breakdown of the staff, the teachers that responded to? It would be interesting to see how Southwest staff responded.
You can see in some of the comments how Southwest staff.
I read the comments, and it was pretty clear where they were coming from.
Any other comments or thoughts?
Paul mentioned that other Big 9 schools were looking at this. Is there any kind of, are they looking at it for fall, or is it just in the infancy stages, or what does that look like?
So Rochester's going to it this fall. Mankato went to it last year. Winona's been on it for a number of years. Red Wing is currently on it. And when I say on it, their end times are somewhere between probably 3:25 and 3:45, all those districts that I mentioned for the secondary students. So this, and again, this is kind of why this is why we brought it up. The research is pretty clear on the kids do better and are ready for school more the later the start time is in the morning. So that was why we thought, okay, we've already had to do it because we had to separate our kids previously. So that's why we thought we would survey the community and share this information with the school board. And for me, I think kind of echo what Chris said. The most striking of every comment I read, the most striking was from a bus driver. And it must have been a parent as well. And they said that, keeping the older kids from the younger kids, it's like, night and day when they're separated. But to do that, unfortunately, you need about an hour and 25 minute turnaround time to do that, and that's what creates the issue of the later end time for the students.
Dennis.
Yeah, and that's what makes sense. I get the challenge with the older kids and the younger kids, but it's that whole extra hour difference that really seems to create a challenge there. It'd be nice to find a workaround on that somehow, but I know it's pretty limiting.
The option D that we presented as this is really fascinating, I think, from my review of the results. We presented option D. Can you move that screen a little bit so that, there we go. As a potential option, push the start back time a little bit for the secondary kids, and then really push the start back time for the elementary. But at the same time, scroll a little bit to the right, Ashley. Other way, sorry. So elementary is done at 3:15. Southwest is 3:30. The high school is done at 3:15. What I found fascinating from the results was I didn't see much commentary on, I don't want my kids starting school that late. I drop them off in the morning. I thought we would see more negative feedback on an 8:45 start time at the elementary.
That was probably the least popular in all the surveys too, wasn't D?
Probably.
Right, yeah, I was just trying to remember too. But it's also a new concept, so.
Actually, that was third place in which group is this? Teachers?
Oh, it's a-
This is parents, yep.
Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. All right, thank you. That was a good discussion. 5.4, Dr. Funk with our special education update.
So before I do this, why don't I have 3 people stand up for the board? We'll start with Chris Dibble. Chris is, as you're aware, is moving from Southwest to the high school. On his right, the guy behind you. On his right is Tyler Johnson, who is currently a high school dean of students, and Tyler will now be the Southwest Middle School principal. And on Chris's left, go ahead, Sheila. And Sheila, why don't you come on down? You can certainly sit here and be part of this discussion. Is Sheila Reby, who has been a teacher in the district, lead teacher for a number of years, 25, is that where we're at? Yep, 25 years. And Sheila is our new Director of Special Services. So, or will be when we approve her at the board meeting in 2 weeks.
Yep.
So those are our new administrators for the district.
Thank you.
So, we, go ahead, Ashley. So, as the board is well aware, we have had our challenges with our special education models in Albert Lee schools for a number of years now. We have spent considerably more money than many of our similar like-sized districts in the state. Much of this was related to the fact that we had a lead teacher model in which there was a lead teacher in every building conducting evals for much of the building. And so most places in Minnesota in special education have what they call a case manager model. And that essentially means the teacher, the special ed teacher, is the case manager for the student they are teaching. And they do most of the evaluation, and they work with the family, and they work with the principal on the IEPs. We really have not focused a lot on the case manager model for 20 or 30 years here. Did you have a lead teacher model when you started? Yeah, so many, many years. So in 2020, the special ed department came up with a new plan because, and this was really driven from this room, to reduce the number of lead teachers we have in the district to start to control cost. So they switched the model to kind of a hybrid model in which we had still lead teachers, but not as many of them, and they would be really working more out of Brookside than in the buildings. And they would be helping teachers with evaluations, and they'd be a resource for teachers. But we really, really struggled with that model this past year. Go ahead, Ashley. So when we transitioned to this model, most of our staff members in our buildings did not believe they were trained properly and given the necessary supports to be successful. They also did not feel that they were provided time to learn the transition to this new model. Members of the eval team, which Sheila was one of those members, she was a lead teacher who then moved over to this building, they were no longer part of a building. And they felt disconnected from families, to some degree disconnected from staff when arranging things for an evaluation. They were an integral part of their buildings prior to this, and now they called to set up an evaluation with a family, and, well, who are you and what's your role? And you're not in this building. So that was a significant concern. The other thing was we have in this district a director, an assistant director, and then we had this eval team, and nobody was really sure what the roles of the assistant director were and what the evals team's roles were. Go ahead. So what we are doing for 2021, and we got a lot of input from a lot of people on this. We talked about this in our interviews with our special ed directors, candidates. We spoke at length about it in a couple admin meetings that we had last week with all the principals and directors in the district. And what we would like to do is get rid of the evaluation team. Nobody really was sure what they were doing anyhow. And replace it with 2 coordinators. And the assistant director who would stay on her current contract. And she would also be responsible for summer school. So these next 2 slides are going to show you kind of where we were this year and what I'm proposing that we go with for next year. So currently within special, and I don't even have the school psychs on here or the speech people, but currently within our special ed department, we have a director, we have really an eval team of 5.5 lead teachers. We have 4.2 nurses, and we have an assistant director. Next slide. So what we're proposing we do is adjust to a director. We hire a secondary coordinator who will oversee 612 sub-ed programming. And all these positions, the 2 coordinators and the director position, all will be licensed special ed director positions. So they will be able to conduct teacher evaluations. They'll assist with teacher evals. The 2 coordinators will be on a 210-day contract. The assistant director will be responsible for early childhood, extended school year, which is summer school, our 18 to 21-year-old program, and then they will continue to assist with teacher evals. We're also looking at helping with staff. One of the concerns we hear repeatedly from talking with staff is we're not aligned between special education and regular ed instruction. So we want to hire an instructional coach, veteran teacher if we can find one within the district, to assist with the alignment of special education and regular ed instruction. Go ahead. A significant concern this past year was there was a lack of training on due process. We were expecting these teachers who really never had to handle too much of due process because they had lead teachers prior to that to take time and learn a lot of it. So we gave them a day really of training and then go forth and do good things. And they struggled. So for this upcoming school year, we're going to provide ongoing professional development with a voluntary 3-day training in July or August for special education teachers. So we're going to give you 3 days where we're going to teach you what right looks like. We'll have time to talk, work through it, so you'll understand what you're going to be, what the expectations are coming into the year. We're also hiring an instructional coach, as I mentioned, which will help with the transition. Go ahead.
Is the instructional coach also special ed licensed teacher?
A licensed teacher, but not a coordinator, or not a licensed director. Yep. During the 21-22 school year, we also, and it's for this school year, and we are going to make sure we set this model up right. We're going to provide special ed staff 1 day a month to work on due process and receive training on the new model. Last year it was, here's your training, go forth. The follow-up was not there. We have dedicated coordinators at K-5, 6-12, early childhood, 18 to 21, who will be working with these different groups of people to make sure that the model is implemented properly. And again, they will also, the coordinators will also be able to be part of the teacher evaluation process as their licensed special ed directors. We'll have clear lines of responsibility for all members of special education. Their roles will be defined and they will receive proper time and training. We're also able to reduce 2.5 positions, which will go back to the classroom where we currently have special ed vacancies. This will result in a savings within special education of over $250,000 with the new model implemented. So not to put you on the spot or anything, Sheila, but just give the board your thoughts and what we talked about.
It was a struggle this year. Our special education teams were used to having that lead teacher in the building. Previous to this year, I was at Lakeview, and I was that go-to. I was that person that they could come to with questions, support, just a quick 10-second question, answer, done, assisting with the evaluation piece. That was taken away. I was taken out of Lakeview, moved to Brookside, then responsible for 2 elementary buildings. That was a big change for our teams. It has been probably close to 30 years where the case facilitator lead teacher model has been in Albert Lee. And to not have that support and that training, they struggled. This was the first year I really saw teachers in the area of special education frustrated, upset, in tears, and just felt unsupported. The training, by giving them the professional development and the training and the tools up front this summer and that continual support and follow-up, I know will ensure success because they are so capable, so can-do attitude. We have amazing staff and they just need to feel that support and need to build that culture up again. And having that go-to person at early childhood, 18 to 21, elementary, secondary, they know this is my contact person and I can go to them with whatever question it is. And if it isn't something they know, they're going to find out who they do need to contact. Because a lot of time was spent, questions weren't answered in a timely manner. So,
Dennis.
There's a question with that. How do the paras play into that role? Are they the assistant for the special ed teachers? And does this enhance that area as well? Because I think sometimes the paras feel like they're struggling with the special needs of some of the students. So it appears that there's more supervision and leadership with it, which trickles down, but I just don't remember how that factors into it.
well, in paras, the SPED teachers, the case managers direct the work of our para educators. I think by providing due process training and time for them to work, having people there for support is going to work with our para educators in a positive manner, because I think sometimes those case managers rely on those para educators to do things that the teacher doesn't have time to do because of that due process work.
You've been, we'll just say 20-plus years, Sheila, with this model. How familiar are you with this coordinator, supervisor type model? Is it a fairly common model followed across the state, maybe in, maybe sliced up a little differently, but similar?
Very similar. Yep, I completed my leadership program 2 years ago with there was over 50 in my cohort. Albert Lee was the only district that had this model of a lead teacher in every building. Nobody else. It was coordinators, supervisors. Yes, we were the only one.
I've heard some concerns that since that change happened from the lead teacher model, that some of these staff are feeling very overwhelmed with work and not having enough time to get it done. Right. Would this change fix that? Is that a training issue, or we need a more staff issue? Or
Yep, in the training and professional development, by giving them the 3 days this summer to really break everything down step by step, every process, every guidance that we can from MDE on what is needed in our special education paperwork to put it in compliance, giving them the tools to complete it efficiently, effectively, but then giving them that time monthly throughout the school year with support. Yes, they have asked for that for a very long time. Mm-hmm.
Kim, you have any thoughts?
The only thought I had is I really like the emphasis on the connection to gen ed. I think anytime we move towards inclusion and doing everything for the student and make it feel as normal of a process for students, I think that sets them up for success too. So I really like that the assistant will be taking that on and connecting that. That's a great piece.
The other thing from talking with a number of candidates for the special education job, which I think was fascinating to learn, was, you know, we do a tremendous job with paperwork and special education in Albert Lea. And I think, you know, Sheila mentioned 30 years ago, Keith Erickson came here, and this was really Keith's model, and tremendous job with it. Well, what we've come to find out over the past week or so, and I think Sheila was one of the individuals taking the lead on this at the elementary, and Tammy Willis was one of them who was taking the lead at the secondary level on this. We were doing a lot of paperwork that wasn't necessarily, we were doing reevaluations that were going into whole evaluations that didn't need to be done. And, you know, I'm famous for a lot of sayings, but one of them is work smarter, not harder. We were working way too hard and not smart enough. And so I think this is something that Sheila has identified, and we need to focus the work in the right areas and not overwhelm people. We need to set them up for success on the front end, and then for this first year, we need to provide the ongoing supports so we can properly transition this to a model that works and is also cost efficient for our school district.
Yeah, there's a couple things connected to what Mike just said. One of the things I've always known about special education is that it includes an avalanche of paperwork, and I've always suspected that it's, you know, you could get around doing a lot of that, and it's probably not all necessary. With this new arrangement, then I am assuming that the case managers who are now the actual people that are the special ed teachers teaching these students are going to be responsible for a lot of that paperwork, but it should be a lot less paperwork because we have done, as Mike said, we've worked a lot harder than we needed to and not as smart as we should have. So am I correct in making that assumption that the teachers, special ed teachers, will be doing a lot of that paperwork, but they'll have training in how to do it and how to avoid doing unnecessary paperwork? Second thing, who is responsible for triage? Who determines, you know, what students go into special ed programs and or who have need accommodations, and how is that going to fit into this model? Who's going to be responsible for determining that?
The students, you mean like brand new for initial services? That will still be.
Excuse me. Yeah. Piggyback on that one. Yeah. Along with that, who decides when they no longer need special ed services? So, yeah, new students. How do we funnel those into the proper arrangement relative to special ed, and how do we determine when special ed is no longer appropriate for that student?
Right. For our initial evaluations, or when a student is initially referred for special education services, the buildings have intervention teams, and if that child has completed 2 interventions that were unsuccessful, the student would be referred for an initial special education evaluation. The coordinators will be involved in that process because that child's team with special education hasn't been, that case manager will be brand new. That case manager would be a part of the evaluation, but the coordinator would lead that first contact to the parent and setting up that meeting and assisting with that. As far as when a child is exited from services, again, that evaluation would take place in order to determine if that child no longer demonstrates a continuing need, and then that team would make that decision.
I would assume that the special ed teacher would be a big player in that.
Right. Absolutely, yep. Those present levels provided in a child's evaluation are the most important component.
Any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, very good. Good luck, Sheila.
Thank you, I'm excited.
Tyler, Chris, good luck. Good luck with the hub if it stays there, Tyler. Just had to add that. All right, that brings us pretty close in German. I just wanted to say it's so nice to see everyone again tonight. Your bright, smiling faces, like I'm hoping our teachers and students see each other this fall. With that being said, let's see, what is the 21st, Monday the 21st is our business meeting. We'll see you then at 5 o'clock. Thank you.